Alrighty, guys, how is everybody doing? It is a Tuesday. It is February 13th edition of the show. I wanted to talk about the Super Bowl. Let's get into it, guys. All right. So, overall, there's a lot of sentiments out there that I disagree with about the big game and about the Super Bowl and just my opinions about the game and about how everything shook out. One, I really think that, the 49ers, if we were going to place blame on, a side of the football, I would blame it on the offensive side. The 49ers in the first quarter, they played great in the first quarter. I mean, they were outgaining the Chiefs 100-7, and they were only up 3-0. Then the 49ers in the second quarter didn't score any points. And I believe that the third quarter they also didn't score any points either. So I believe that they actually in the second quarter, no, they scored 7. They had 10 points in the entire, leading up to the fourth quarter of the football game. That's terrible, offensive play. When you're supposed to have the best running back in the league, honestly, the wide receivers like Brandon Ayuk, I want to say that just off the top of my head, I don't even think that Ayuk went for like 40 yards in the game. So if you were going to say that like Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, and George Kittle were going to combine for like less than 60 yards, like that's a terrible, terrible offensive game from Brock Purdy and from Kyle Shanahan. That's really poor. As a quarterback, like you're supposed to be the best in the biggest moments. That's what the job entails. It's kind of why Lamar Jackson, it's why Patrick Mahomes is still better than Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson had a better season. Lamar Jackson from September to December was better, but then in January it comes down to 160-minute game. That's how the professional football works. Comes down to 160-minute game. And he was terrible. It just is like Dak Prescott had a tremendously better season than Jordan Love. It wasn't even close, the regular season. But in the January game, Jordan Love had a better January. So it's just like the NCAA tournament. Like, it all is predicated on playoffs. That's what it is. And for the Kansas City Chiefs, their defense all year was really, really good. And I should have acknowledged that their defense was better. And their defense was an elite level defense. And Patrick Mahomes, like, this is not how the narrative will work, but he was a game manager, and he kind of was, if his name was like Brad Johnson, people would say, it's, the defense that was able to win the Super Bowl. And honestly, the Chiefs' defense played just as big of a role as Mahomes in winning. But Mahomes, I got to say, like, he only turned the ball over one time in this game. Mahomes, the great quarterbacks managed the game. So all the best quarterbacks of all time have managed the game. And Peyton Manning, when he won his championship, he was not even, he was nowhere close to the, to the MVP seasons that he had, just like Aaron Rodgers. So the playoffs, they really don't make a lot of sense. Like, playoff quarterback and regular season quarterback is completely different. Like, Drew Brees is a great regular season, is a great quarterback in the regular season. Joe Flacco and Eli Manning are better postseason quarterbacks than I would say Drew Brees was. Drew Brees needed, Brett Favre to throw that interception, or Drew Brees would have never gotten to a championship. Jared Goff outdueled Drew Brees in the biggest game of Brees' career. Drew Brees took on all that money And he never was sniffing championships, when Drew Brees took all of that cash. Aaron Rodgers went 15-1, and then the team had 5 turnovers and lost to Eli Manning at home, and Eli Manning and that Giants team won by 17 points. So the game of football, that's what makes it interesting is, it has parity a little bit, unlike the NBA, where the NBA, a lot of times, like the Denver Nuggets are the best team in the regular season, and they're going to end up, in the finals. Same with the Boston Celtics. Like, it isn't a fluke. You have 4 games to prove you're the better team. You can't let a team beat you 4 times. But if it were Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl, like, it would be a 7-game series for sure. Or the Niners would, have a chance to win. There was a reason the Niners were favored by 3, and it's because the Kansas City Chiefs, this is what's incredible, in 4 quarters of playoff football, consecutively from the second half of the AFC Championship to the first half of the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs scored 3 points. But in fairness to Kansas City, what did they end up with? 25. So in 5 quarters of play, what was it? In Baltimore, they scored 17, could have scored like in the 20s. They scored 50, in the halves where they needed it to happen. And honestly, for Mahomes, it's so special because he shows versatility in that, Brett Favre was not able to kind of play the style of Mahomes. Mahomes is a better scrambler, but Mahomes is a better winner than Favre was because Favre would only know one way, which is go, go, go. Favre will be threading needles all day, where Patrick Mahomes, carved up the 49ers just like a 42-year-old Tom Brady. His average attempt per yards in the second half when they scored all those points was 4 yards. And other than that huge throw down the field in the first half, Mahomes wasn't the typical gunslinger that you saw during his first couple of years here. And without Tyreek Hill, they've been a tight end laden, Tom Brady-like team, but Mahomes has adapted, and that's the special part of Patrick Mahomes. All right, but let's talk about the Super Bowl specifically. So we're talking about the 49ers. Everybody is complimenting Brock Purdy. And yeah, Purdy didn't turn it over, so he didn't throw 5 interceptions in the game. But he also he did all right. I'd give him a C- or a C. But unlike the Lions game or unlike the even Green Bay, the plays that needed to be made against the Kansas City defense, he couldn't do. He was driving down the field and it came down to that 3rd down. It comes down to one play. If he hits that 3rd and 4, the odds of San Francisco winning are great because then they would run the ball 3 times, maybe get a first down, kick the field goal with 20 seconds, or the game would be over. So that's why in that moment, I would have gone for it. And now it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. It isn't the easiest decision, but 4th and 4, 32-yard line, if you get it. The interesting thing is, on 3rd down, by the way, you could have ran McCaffrey. So you could have run Christian McCaffrey on 3rd down, okay? In the lasting moments of that football game, you could have run Christian McCaffrey. Either it picks up a first down or the Chiefs, whatever, they hold it to a 1. You get 1 or 2 yards, making the 4th down easier. But the point is the clock would run, so Kansas City would elect to use that timeout. So then the 4th down play is essentially the game. If you get it, Jake Moody's going to be lining up a 44-yarder, and then it depends on if Jake Moody can make a field goal in which his leg is capable of hitting. And then it comes down to your special teams, and Moody made from 53. Now, he made from 55. He missed an extra point, so it's possible that he misses that field goal, but you take your chances there. The other part you want to say is that Kansas City, most likely, if it's 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining in that game, whatever, Kansas City uses their timeout. If you don't get that play the odds are is that Mahomes will drive down and Butker will make the field goal, okay? But the way it ended up is that you're electing now, it was an incomplete pass. It was risky for Moody to take that 53-yarder. Now, he drew it in and hit it, but it was risky to take that field goal. Then, by the way, so the 49ers got the field goal, but then their defense played they played like quarters coverage. They played like their backers and everybody played like 12 yards off of the line of scrimmage. So Kansas City was hitting these little tight end slip plays where the tight end would slip out of his formation. Mahomes would dump off the football to him. Very high percentage plays. And Kansas City was easily able to get into Butker range. So San Francisco pretty much yielded a tie. All right. And then it comes down to, when it's a tie game, then it comes down to which quarterback is going to win. But San Francisco should have, when it was a close game, San Francisco should have treated it like we're the road team and you're going out there with Mr. Irrelevant versus Patrick Mahomes. And Brock Purdy, if he was a decent level quarterback or if the offense could have been fine, like Deebo Samuel was hurt, in the biggest games, Deebo Samuel, unfortunately, this stems back to South Carolina. He's injured. So George Kittle, injured. Fred Warner. So you're missing like all of these players. Deebo Samuel's hurt. Why are you wanting to go to overtime with the Kansas City Chiefs? Like, it seemed like it was rigged and the 49ers were trying to lose in the most excruciating way. Because honestly, if you're a Kansas City fan, you're happy Mahomes is touching the ball again. If you're San Francisco, you have 3 yards to honestly win. McCaffrey would gain like a yard, I can presume. And then you'd have a 3-yard play to win. It would just be like a 2-point conversion. There, you're an offensive-led head coach. So you're putting the game in Shanahan. If you're Kyle Shanahan, you're putting it in your hands rather than Steve Wilkes. And honestly, Shanahan was too nervous to go against Spags for that 4th down. And that's what happened. And then Steve Wilkes got cooked in the second half because then Reed and Mahomes figured out Steve Wilkes. And I think Reed and Mahomes, kind of like what they did against the Eagles, they played a little bit of cat and mouse possum where they had the great play callers have a lot of tricks up their sleeve late in games. Another huge play in the game is that Brock Purdy it was the possession after Kansas City got stuffed on 3rd and 1. Kansas City had a very good punt, very good special teams play. Like Johnny Townsend was really good in the entire game for Kansas City. The 49ers had a screen set up for McCaffrey in the 3rd quarter. And they had it was the first play of the second possession of the 3rd quarter. It was a screen pass all the way to the left side of the field. Purdy had an opportunity to get the ball off, okay, because there was no defender there. So you didn't need a big throw. You needed, one of those, like, you needed him to throw at 7 yards to the sideline, and which is what a pro can do. And Chris Jones was there. I know he was there. But Purdy panicked and did not see the field, and that play it should have been a touchdown, or it should have been a 40-yard gain for Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey in the game, not only did he fumble the ball, but he also did not break tackles. I mean, there were several really good calls where McCaffrey had a lot of running room, where Deebo Samuel had a lot of running room, where the Kansas City defense would tackle these guys in the open field and prevent yards after tackle, yards after contact. So Shanahan actually dialed up some pretty good plays. But when it came down to it, in overtime, Mahomes and Kansas City, they were ready to win the game. They were the more aggressive. Like, this is what I think about the game of football. I'd honestly would rather play it out like Dan Campbell than Kyle Shanahan 90% of the time. Now, there is times when it's smart to take points. Like Kansas City, they know they have Mahomes. After the guy missed the extra point, they took the field goals. They played conservatively and won, where the 49ers played conservatively and lost. Both teams played pretty conservative. The 49ers, I mean, they did go for that fourth down oddly in the third quarter. So Shanahan, his patterns were just really unpredictable and poor because you went for the third down to George Kittle and you hit that play. But honestly, in the fourth quarter, if you ran McCaffrey there, you would have had a fourth down and 2 yards to win the football game. It's essentially a 2-point conversion, and you're putting it in your offense's hands, and there's a chance that Mahomes doesn't touch the ball last. You would do it if you're Tom Brady. So it shows you that Shanahan still has a lack of trust in Brock Purdy. And honestly, for Brock Purdy, it does come down to some inexperience and talent limitations. I mean, Brock Purdy is short in height. He doesn't really throw the ball over the top all that well. Bottom line is that, that third down, if he would have set the protection better, if him and the offensive line were on the same page, Juwan Jennings was running like a little Texas route or a China route where you go in and then out, like the Julian Edelman whip route. And Jennings won, okay? And the guy held, which they didn't call, but Jennings won on that play. And Purdy in the protection, they allowed Chris Jones to run unblocked. So it was a critical error. Like, in a game like this, in a close game, which is kind of what the 49ers had to play, the reason the 49ers played a close game is because they didn't play football that was, what's the word? It starts with a C. It's continuity or I'll come up with the term. Complementary. So when the complementary football is what cost the Niners the game. So when the defense was balling out, the offense was an F. It was a failure. In the third quarter, they literally didn't gain a yard. They went 3 possessions of 3 and outs. Okay? They sucked. They were terrible. In the third quarter. That's what cost you the game. I mean, when you have 3 possessions and you're going against Mahomes and Reed, you can't allow a great quarterback you can't be that offensively inept. And that is why Kansas City won these playoff games. Against Buffalo, they shut down Buffalo, when they needed to in the fourth quarter. And Buffalo's defense was not to the level of San Francisco or the Ravens. So Kansas City was able to score 27 points, and Kansas City was able to, run a ton of plays, and Pacheco was able to run really well. Then with Baltimore's defense was good enough to win a Super Bowl championship. Baltimore was the best team all year. If we had to run these playoffs back again, if it was Chiefs Baltimore again, I'll lose money again. I didn't even bet on this game, but I would risk losing money. I would pick Baltimore if it was Baltimore, Kansas City again, because Mike McDonald's defense is just that incredible. I mean, the stunts that he runs on defense, he times it up perfectly with Mahomes, watching Mike McDonald and watching San Francisco's scheme play defense, or watching. It's not only an offense to San Francisco's scheme, it's an offense to a lot of people. Mike McDonald's scheme with those players like Kyle Hamilton and with the defensive tackles being so athletic, like with Roquan, Patrick Queen, and the defensive line play, it's just the way that he creates this type of scheme. It is fantastic. It's unlike pretty much anything that you are watching. It is elite. It is phenomenal. That is how he's able to attack. All right. But Lamar Jackson in the second half threw some interceptions. They didn't really run the football, and they didn't show a lot of poise. They had a great defense, so they could have rid their defense. It's where Lamar Jackson was playing too much hero ball instead of we needed him, if you're rooting for the Ravens, to be a game manager. All right, we needed him the manager of the game, to manage the game, okay, appropriately and win that game. So, that's so complimentary was the key in this game. When the 49ers defense was playing great for 3 quarters, San Francisco scored 10 points, and you can't have that happen. And then Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle, that's a padlock stat. They don't. I believe that they don't even go over like 6. I think that Samuel and Kittle together in this game probably had like over less than 15 receiving yards in the game. And Jawan Jennings was able to, have some yards, and Kyle Juszczyk. But if you're Kansas City, you absolutely win if Kyle Juszczyk and Jawan Jennings are the leading receivers. That's you doing your job. All right. Travis Kelce through the overtime period still ended up with 90 yards. Mahomes still ran for 70 yards, had over 400 and whatever yards. Okay. San Francisco's defense in the red zone was good enough. But then in the end of the game, in overtime and whatever, that Mahomes and them, when it was a blitz, like Mahomes was able to adjust easily. So when it was a chess match, Mahomes would always have the final say because the blitzes were incredibly predictable. Maybe losing Dre Greenlaw, added into this. It might have had a huge factor because you were playing a backup linebacker, but the blitzes were incredibly predictable. But I would have went cover 0. All right, you tried to put Warner on George Kittle, or excuse me, you tried to put Warner on Kelce. But honestly, you needed to go cover. Honestly, after you kick that field goal, you got to act like you want to win the game. All right, here's the thing: when Marcus Valdes-Scantling, when he ran back 8 yards and made that mistake, it's 2nd and 12. If you're a great defense, it's 2nd and 13. You have 3 plays to win. If you're the elite of the elite and you're a champion, you win and you close out. You get pressure a couple of times and win and close out. It's kind of like why Steve Spagnuolo in 2007 was able to beat Tom Brady. Because after the Giants scored that touchdown with Plexico Burress, with 35 seconds remaining, Tom Brady had 35 seconds left to get anything. And guess what happened? Justin Tuck got a sack on Tom Brady on 2nd down. And it pretty much ended the game, and then he was heaving it to Randy Moss on 4th down, incomplete. So that play, and I know that offensive football was different at that time, but that was still a tremendous, tremendous offense with Randy Moss. That was one of the greatest offenses ever. Steve Spagnuolo, that defense shut them down to about 14 points. So that's where the Giants played complimentary. They rid their defense, right? But when Eli Manning and the defense was humming and they needed the plays, Eli to Tyree was the play. Eli to Manningham was the play. The Giants took those risks when they're playing against Tom Brady. Eli to that Manningham throw is in the double coverage. Okay, but that's just an elite level throw that happened, just like Mahomes throwing it in the double coverage against the 49ers in the first half. You have to do things sometimes. Your entire game plan shouldn't be in fear, but when it's time to press and it's time for winning time, being conservative against the elite, that just doesn't work. Fortune favors the bold. And Kyle Shanahan was not bold enough, all right, in this contest. And Purdy wasn't good enough. So if you're the San Francisco 49ers now, you got Kittle, who's a little bit older. You're going to have to pay Fred Warner. I mean, honestly, Purdy played a fine season, but is Purdy still going to be that good going forward, or is he going to turn into kind of Jimmy Garoppolo and regress a little bit? I know that he's younger. I know that he has some mobility. I know that he stays calm in the big moments and won't lose you a game, which is a key. And he did win you some games. Like against the Lions, he won you the game when the defense was not playing at a big-time level. Against Green Bay, he was able to win you a game when the defense, again, was getting shredded in the first half. But that was a little complimentary because then the 49ers defense showed up in the second half. to me, like, I look at a Bo Nix, and usually Colin Cowherd is, a lot of times you might disagree with something that Colin says, but he's spot on with this, is that Bo Nix can be just as good as a Brock Purdy. I really believe it, because Bo's taller, Bo is physically able to move. The thing you don't know is if Bo Nix can play well in the big games against Brock Purdy, or can play just as good. But I think that if Bo Nix goes to the right place, that he can be just as good as Brock Purdy. So that's kind of how I viewed the Super Bowl, guys, is that the 49ers had a lot of chances to win. They did not do it. And overall, Kansas City, they did not have the best team all year. Their offense at times they were a beatable team, but nobody beat them. And that's what you could say about the best teams, just like the Patriots in 2000. And the Patriots team that beat the Rams, that team is some of the teams we're talking about. All right, the Eagles were able to beat a flawed Patriots team by being aggressive. And in these playoff games, like, a lot of times they're tight. It's funny how it works, just like the NBA playoffs. A lot of times these games are tight, and that's really where you see the stars. The best of the best show up in the playoffs. The regular season, it's, sometimes a mosh pit, sometimes the margins are more considerable. But that's why Mahomes is still the best, and that's why Kansas City is the best. And Mahomes is going to have opportunities now to get to maybe 5 Super Bowls, which is an incredible feat. I don't know if the NFL, I don't believe that the NFL is scripted, but the Chiefs were beatable, and Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy, when it came time for winning time, Josh Allen, all of them had opportunities to really put a big time dagger into the Kansas City Chiefs. None of them were able to do it. And Brock Purdy had the best chance, up 10-3. The defense was playing at a great level with Steve Wilkes. But then you allowed Kansas City to get their footing, okay? And we could talk about the muff punt as well. I went a half hour without talking about that. The muff punt and McCaffrey fumble. You have to play clean. But again, the 49ers defense was so great in this game. That strip on Pacheco was huge. They made enough plays defensively where if the offense could have held up their end of the bargain, guess what would have happened? If the 49ers would have been up 14, then Mahomes would have pressed, and the 49ers defense then could have been ready for Mahomes to be pressing, and then you could have gotten some more interceptions and turned this into your game. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen because the offense was inept, okay, at critical moments during most of the entire game, okay? And Shanahan, your goal as an offensive coordinator is to get your best players playing at a high level. And McCaffrey did not see a lot of success. Kittle saw almost no success catching the football. And Deebo Samuel was just about hurt. And Ayuk didn't even experience success. And through 5 quarters of play, where your defense, by the way, got your offense, it's not like your offense didn't even see the damn ball. Your offense saw the ball so much. Steve Wilkes did so much for you. And then, unfortunately, that Wilkes defense turned into what it did, and then Mahomes was able to carve it. He had all the answers then late. But Spagnuolo in Kansas City in the critical moments won this game, and it was in the third quarter, it was in the second quarter. In a game that close, it's never really about one play. Everybody's going to talk about the overtime and how spectacular Purdy played and whatever. You only got them field goals, by the way. Okay, it's sometimes it's, it's not about the scorecard, there's no video on the scorecard. Meaning, like, Brock Purdy was that golfer that, he would hit a great approach shot to 8 feet, and then he would miss a putt by a little bit. And then he would go in the playoff hole, he'd hit it to about 10 feet, and he'd miss a putt. And the other guy would birdie and beat him. by playing uglier golf. Like in the first playoff hole, if this were a hypothetical, Brock Purdy versus Mahomes, Brock Purdy would hit it on the green the 8 feet. He would miss his birdie putt. Mahomes would hit it in the bunker, but would get up and down, and they would par. And then in the next hole, Brock Purdy would hit it to 10 feet. He would miss his by a little bit, and Patrick Mahomes would birdie. Just like Tiger Woods, Rocco mediate. That is how it went. It's almost like Goodell was like to Kyle Shanahan, you can't go for it and end the game here. We need Mahomes to have another shot at the ball, just like overtime. Just like the overtime rules with Josh Allen. Everything wants the offense to have a chance to respond. Your goal is to prevent Mahomes from beating you. The best way to do that is obviously to never let him touch it again. And with what I just described, it would have happened if they ran it and went for it on that fourth down.